I thank you for being here. I'm Alex Lagarde and I work as a software engineer at the Obeo company. And today we are going to see why does your documentation suck and what you can do to make things better, thanks to Mylyn Intent. So what's Intent in a nutshell? Well, it's a documentation environment integrated to the Eclipse IDE. And as we are going to see, the main issue that we have with our current documentation is that it quickly becomes outdated in regards to the changes you made on your code. That's why the main purpose of Intent is to provide tooling for keeping your documentation synchronized with any kind of development artifact, whether it's Java code, C++ code, models, manifest files, and so on. And following the Eclipse mantra, be extensible, be customizable, you will be able to customize Intent to stick to your own development processes. So the Intent project is currently in incubation phase under the Mylyn docs component, and the first release of Intent was for the junior release train. So I know what you are about to say. Oh no, why a new documentation tooling? Documentation sucks. And I have to admit it's true. So let's try to understand why does our documentation suck. Well, first of all, when you're looking for an information inside a documentation, most of the time, it has not been written, it's not there. And especially for open sources projects, although we claim that we should be transparent for all the users and the contributors. So why does nobody write doc? Well, I think it comes from the Agile manifesto, which promotes the value of working softwares over comprehensive documentation. And I think this sentence is often misunderstood. It just means that the best documentation in the world is no excuse if your project fails to deliver a working software, but it does not mean to discarding documentations at all. Being agile does not mean being short-sighted. Remember, if your primary goal is to deliver a working software, your secondary goal is to enable your next effort, preparing for the next game, as Brun would say. And yes, documentation is a perfect way to preserve knowledge and prevent your team from reinventing things when people leave and newcomers join. So really, you should consider that the documentation is a part of your software and is part of your software quality. And the other thing that really sucks with documentation is that most of the time it's outdated. It never reflects the recent changes you made on your software. And consequently, the readers will less and less trust your documentation and less read it. And in the end, no one will read your documentation, although you spend a lot of time and money trying to keep it up to date. And why is documentation often outdated? Well, that's the inconvenient truth about documentation. I mean, we are in 2012, and keeping a doc up to date is a simple task, and we have no tooling for doing that. I mean, when you write a piece of code, how many of you take the time for browsing through the hundreds of pages of documentation just to find out where to document this change and check for the old doc consistency afterward? No one, so sooner or later, your doc will get unsynchronized, outdated. And that's exactly what Intent is about, helping you to keep your documentation synchronized with your technical artifacts. So to do so, what do we want? We want a simple mechanism that allows us to link documentation parts with technical artifacts. Because thanks to this formal link, it is easy when you change a technical artifact to determine all the small documentation parts you have to update. It's straightforward. And this mechanism gives your documentation the ability to respond to changes, turning it into an agile documentation. So very simply, instead of using many documentation files on one side and many technical artifacts on the other side, with no link between them, you have one single Intent document that mixes both. So let's take a quick look at this Intent document. So an Intent document is structured like any documentation, so it contains chapters, sections, subsections, and so on. And it contains explanation in natural language, like any documentation, right? And these explanations are described using the textile syntax, which is parsed by Mylyn Wikitext, And for the one who don't know the textile syntax, it's basically, it has basically all the features you would expect from a markup language. You can add images, table, list, and so on. And in addition to this explanation in natural language, you also have model fragments. And actually, these are these model fragments that allow us to link a piece of documentation with a technical artifact. So I'm not going to present the whole intent syntax. You have the wiki for that. But I would just like to present a key feature of the intent syntax. It's the contribution mechanism. So here, inside the first model fragment, I'm going to define a new actor on my system, the consistency checker actor. And as in my current chapter, I just want to give a very high-level overview of my actors. I will just name it and say that it's a computer type actor. And then, inside another model fragment that could be located before or after this definition of the actor, I can contribute to the consistency checker actor definition and add other informations. So, for instance, here, I'm in a section which purpose is to explain all the processes each actor is involved in. So I'm going to contribute to the consistency checker actor and say that he participates in some processes. And this contribution mechanism allows us to split the technical artifacts descriptions across the concerns. So as I said, inside the first chapter, I can give a very high-level definition of my technical artifacts. And then in another section with another purpose, I'm going to add other informations that are relevant in my current concern. And for instance, in a chapter dedicated to implementation detail, I'm going to link a new artifact, which is the implementation of my consistency checker actor. But enough with the chit-chat, let's see intent in action. So just after the Juno release, we have integrated intent inside the Smart EA tool, which is a tool that provides a set of modelers to manage enterprise architectures models. And it's based on the TOGAF methodology. And it's a really good use case for intent because the enterprise architectures model contain a lot of business critical information that really needs to be documented. And every time you make a change, you have to be sure that you have documented it. And actually, the TOGAF methodology provides a set of document templates. They are like 20 documentation files, which could be around 100 of pages each. So it's really, really hard to keep all those documentation files up to date with all the change I made on my architectures model. So let's see how intent can help. So let's first take a look at the models provided by the Smart EA tool. So you've got table representations, diagrams, and so on. And all these modelers help you describing your enterprise architecture. So if I look at this use case diagram, which lists all the actors of my system and the processes in which they are participating, I see that the defining the selling price of offer process is not linked with any actor of my system. So I should define a new actor which participates in this process. So let's define this new actor inside the documentation and see how we can propagate the changes from the documentation to the technical artifacts. So, of course, the first thing you need to do is to create an intent document to write your documentation. So, intent provides a set of document templates to help you get it started. So, we have added a new TOGAF template, which uses all the documentation templates from the TOGAF methodology. So here I've already written my intent document, so you can see it contains chapters, sections, and so on. And I'm going to open the section dedicated to the human actors definition, as I want to add a new human actors to my system. And you can already notice that you are able to open an intent editor on any subpart of the documentation, no matter how small. The idea is that you have above the eyes only what you need to see in your current concern and not having to handle 100 of pages document. It fulfills the loading off your brain concept of Mylyn. Only see what you need to see in your current task. Okay, so As I already said, a section contains explanation in natural language and the corresponding model fragments. So let's add this new human actor to my system. How I'm going to do that? Well, first I'm going to write simple documentation in natural language, as I will do with a standard documentation, right? So my new actor is called the Special Buying Advisor, and I'm going to explain what is its purpose inside my system. And in addition to this pure textual documentation, I'm going to add a model fragment, and I'm going to contribute to my business architecture by adding this new actor. Okay, so this actor is called the Special Buying Advisor. And I say I wanted him to be participating in the selling, defining the selling price process. And when I save my document, Intent compares the documentation with the technical artifacts and detects synchronization issues. So if I look at the synchronization issue, Intent says, okay, you've defined an actor which is called the Special Buying Advisor inside your documentation, but not inside your technical artifact. I can visualize the difference using the brand new EMF Compare 2 editor. And indeed, I see that in the left, inside my intent document, I've defined an actor which is not present inside my technical artifacts in the right. And I can propagate the changes in one click. So now, the actor I've defined inside my documentation has been committed to the technical artifact. And as you can see, now I see the actor I've defined inside my documentation directly inside my representations. And one other interesting feature of Intent is that you can query your documentation. So for instance, let's say I don't recall exactly what the buying rule is about. Well, using the quick outline, I can search for all the occurrences of the buying rule inside my current editor. So I see that it's referenced by two actors, the client actor and the Special Buying Advisor. And if I type Ctrl-O again, I can search for the old documentation. And here I see that the buying rule has been defined in some sections, is also referenced by some other actors. And of course, you're able to open an Intent editor just on this section. Okay, so now that you saw how we can update the documentation and propagate the changes on the technical artifacts, let's take the other way around. Let's make a modification on the technical artifacts and see how Intent reacts. So I'm going to open a new type of diagram provided by SmartEA, which is an event diagram that describes the relationships between all my processes. And I'm going to say that before being able to sell a trip, I've got to define my offer catalog. And as soon as I save my technical artifacts, Intent detects synchronization issue that you can see in the problem view. Sorry. Okay, so let's open the documentation to see what is the synchronization issue. I can still visualize it using the EMF Compare editor. And all right, I see that in the technical artifacts, the process defining the catalog offers follows the process selling a trip, but it's not the case inside my documentation. And why do I have two synchronization issues? Well, because actually the reference is bidirectional, so it's also true to say that the process selling a trip precedes the process defining the catalog offer. So to fix the synchronization issue, I'm going to update my model fragments. And we've provided quick fixes so that model fragments can be automatically automated. And you never have to type a model fragments by your own. Okay, so of course, I've updated my model fragments, and I've got to update the corresponding explanation in natural language, explaining why did I introduce this new relationship between these two processes. And you can see that now, I've got no synchronization issue anymore. So my documentation and my technical artifacts are up to date. Okay, and one last thing I wanted to show you is how from a simple piece of textual explanation, I can create a formal link toward the technical artifact. So let's create a new technical artifact, a new business service actually, which we will call deleting an offer. Of course, as soon as I save my technical artifact, Intent detects synchronization issues. So let's open the section dedicated to the business service description. And let's just write a piece of text that explains this new business service. So again, it's just a pure documentation task. And to associate this piece of text with a technical artifact, the only thing I need to do is to drag the technical artifact, the business service deleting an offer, and to drop it inside my documentation. And the model fragment will be automatically created. So basically, if you are not fond of the model fragment syntax, you don't have to write a model fragment at any time. You just have to drag and drop things to link piece of documentations with the technical artifacts. And then to update the model fragments, you just have to apply quick fixes. So you can see that now I don't have any synchronization issue anymore, right? Because my business service is both defined in the technical artifacts and in the documentation. But Intent is much more than just a synchronization framework. Actually, it is able to check constraints. And here, I've got a validation issue because I've plugged inside Intent a custom constraint that says that any business service should be provided to at least one actor. So Intent is not happy, and we have to fix this validation issue. So let's say that the new business service deleting an offer is provided to the accountant actor. Okay, so now Intent is happy. I don't have any validation issue anymore. However, I still have a synchronization issue because I've said inside my documentation that the business service was provided to some actor, but not inside my technical artifacts. So again, I can apply the changes in one click. And in the end, I've got no validation issue anymore, so I know that my documentation is correct. And I've got no synchronization issue anymore, so I know that my documentation is up to date. And if I look at the technical artifact, yes, it has been updated. Okay. So one other thing that really sucks with documentation is documentation sharing. According to me, documentation is a social task, and it will be very interesting to share ideas in real time. And actually, we have specified the Intent architecture exactly for that purpose. So behind the scene, Intent is based on a client-server architecture. You have a central repository in which you store the Intent document and many other useful informations like synchronization issues and so on. And around this central Intent repository, you have a set of Intent clients. And actually, the Eclipse editor is just one client among others. So when you modify the Intent document through the Eclipse editor and you save, the modification gets committing on the Intent repository. And the Intent repository notifies all the other clients that are listening for these modifications. And this repository notion is totally abstract. So we have a default implementation which uses an hidden folder inside the Intent project, but we could imagine any type of implementation. And for the Kepler release, we are working on a CDO-based Intent repository. I don't know if you're familiar with CDO, but basically it's a technology that allows to share models in real time, and anytime some clients modify a models and commits, all the other clients gets updated in real time. So with this CDO-based Intent repository, you will be able to share your documentation in real time. So two users can open the same document, and anytime a user modifies the document and saves the modifications, the other user sees the modifications in real time. So I know that some people may consider this as a gadget, but I don't. I really think that having real-time feedbacks and reviews about your documentation is really an important feature for documentation. And one last thing I wanted to talk about, in the demo, you saw how can the intent documentation can be synchronized with models, right? But intent is able to synchronize any kind of technical artifact. So let's try to take a quick look about how the synchronization mechanism works inside intent. Anytime a change occurs on the documentation or on the technical artifact, the intent synchronizer is notified and compares the documentation model fragments with the technical artifacts represented as models. And if he finds differences, it's going to raise synchronization issues. And actually, this mechanism is totally extensible. So for instance, if I want to be able to synchronize Java files, the only thing I need to do is to plug inside intent a synchronization bridge that is able to represent a Java file as a model. And if I want to synchronize plugin.xml file, the only thing I need to do is to plug inside intent a synchronization bridge that is able to represent plugin.xml file as a model. And in that context, there is a new project that has been created this year and which will be presented by Stephane Begaudeau this afternoon, which is called Ariadne. And Ariadne is very interesting for intent because it extracts all the technical information that I provided by the Eclipse IDE, so the Java files, the Git repositories and commits, your Mylyn task, your Bugzilla issues, your plugin dependencies, and so on, and compute all this information as a model. So for intent, Ariadne is some kind of ultimate synchronization bridge. And thanks to Ariadne, you will be able to synchronize inside your documentation any kind of technical artifact. And one other really interesting thing about using Ariadne inside intent is that you will be able to really automate the guidelines checking. For instance, you can plug inside intent a custom constraint that says that any Bugzilla issue should not be closed if a test has not been written. And if it is not the case, you will see intent raising validation issues, and you will know that you have not fulfilled the guidelines. Okay, so if you had only 3 things to remember about intent, is that intents allow you to keep your documentation synchronized with the real world, that intents allow you to check constraints, and that intents allow real-time collaboration around documentation. So thank you very much. I think, yes, we have a little time for questions. And don't forget to give feedback. Even if you don't like intent, I would really like to understand why you don't. And we are really trying to convince people that documentation is important. And we would really be glad even for negative feedbacks. Yeah.
So I'm working on a new incubation project, Eclipse, which is a runtime component. So it has an API, but it doesn't really have many of the actors and models and so on that you were just describing. Is that where Ariadne would help me to extract that information? And I'm confused as to how what I've seen, because I completely agree with you, documentation is key.
Okay.
I'm confused how I can apply that to the project I work on.
Well, from now on, intent don't have synchronization bridge, okay? So it is planned for Kepler to write a synchronization bridge thanks to Ariadne to synchronize Java files, manifest, and so on. So from now on, intent is only able to synchronize models.
Okay.
But before the end of the year, we should be able to synchronize with everything else.
Okay, cool. I'll keep an eye on that.
And yeah, one other interesting thing is as you represent a Java file as a model, you give an abstraction, and you could say that, okay, Java files is a list of methods with some that are API and so on, but you could also consider that in the scope of your project, Java file have a special meaning, and I don't know, you want to represent Java file in a test project as a test, and you really have the abstraction to say, okay, this file should be represented as I want. Yes?
Can you maybe show us again one of the example documents? I have a question regarding that.
Okay.
So you're creating links to technical artifacts or technical fragments?
Yeah.
For user documentation, the user doesn't care about Java documentation, so can I hide it somehow?
Yeah, actually that's also one of the things I would like to do for the Kepler release. I don't know if I will have time, but as you said, with the quick fixes and the drag and drop thing, model fragments are created automatically. So I would really like to provide an editor which completely hides the model fragments, and which is just a pure documentation editor. Because I know that for users that have not practiced models and that are not fond of textual syntaxes, it's a bit difficult to learn. So yeah, you could imagine like an OpenOffice editor in which you just say, okay, this piece of documentation is talking about this Java project, and I'm done. Okay.
So not yet.
Not yet, but soon. And of course, I didn't say so, but if you want to become an intern committer, we would be welcome. We will welcome you. Okay. Is there any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.